Welcome back. Okay, so tonight I thought I would address a topic which is, quite useful if, you're planning to live here or if you're planning to visit, and that is dating in Poland. Now, there are probably a few guides out there already, and I've admittedly skimmed a few for perhaps a few, customable type things. I've had a few dates. I've been here 2 years now, and yeah, okay, I've met a few women, and on the whole, it's largely been a positive experience. Not to put women in the UK down, but one thing I find is Polish women are a bit more straightforward in terms of they're more direct. They're more obvious, not obvious, they're honest. So if they don't like something, they're more inclined to say, from my experience. And this has helped me a lot. I prefer honesty, and I prefer people to be, upfront. I don't like to be messed around, and, well, who does? So I thought I'd, talk a little bit about my dating experience here, give you some advice, choose to follow it or not. Everyone has their own style. So I thought I'd talk about, where can you meet women in Poland? Now, obviously, Warsaw, it's a very modern city, right? So you're going to meet a lot of people through the traditional ways, such as, going to clubs and bars. This isn't really my approach. I have to admit, when when you don't speak the language or don't speak very much of the language, going up to random people and trying to talk, and then being met with a blank face is perhaps not the most fun. So it's not the style I would approach, but I mean, if you are confident and you want to give it a try, there are a lot of places kind of off Nowy Świat and Mazowiecka, Vicka. I probably pronounced that horribly, but there are quite a few young places, and there are lots of clubs and bars in the centre. So you're spoilt for choice, really. And, let's be honest, when you're looking around Poland, the women here are incredible, to put it simply. Again, not to put down the UK, but I don't think the standard of health in the UK is necessarily as good as it could be on an average country level. I mean, when you look around here, gym membership is very popular, running, active sports, they're very much a common thing. So, most of the people you see here are in, very good condition. They look after themselves. The diet here is, I would say, pretty, good. Meat and veg is the standard, but, people are a bit more sensible. They have a kind of a bigger breakfast, a bigger lunch, maybe next to nothing at dinner. And again, it's healthy. Now, of course, if you're not the type to go to bars and clubs and that sort of thing, there are the obvious ways. So, admittedly, I've tried a few apps while I've been here, and this is primarily how I've met women. So you have Tinder, you have Bumble, OkCupid, Badoo, but no, I haven't really had any success there. I'd say OkCupid, I've met some of the more serious people on there. Tinder, met some interesting people. Bumble, met some interesting people. I'll be honest, nothing's quite worked out yet, and so I'm still on these apps and having fun. I personally hate the way that online dating has gone. When I was younger, you tended to have a more professional website, a full detailed profile, and, things like Plenty of Fish, for example, in the UK. And I don't know, I like to know a bit about someone before I contact them. and the kind of the new way of pretty much, do you like their photo? Yeah, it's not my ideal. Because I don't want to meet just anyone. But here we go. So what are some of the other things? So there's speed dating. There are a few organisations out there that do that, particularly for internationals. I may or may not be going to an event next month. I haven't decided yet, but I, showed some interest. I've met people through, through friends, recommendations, through colleagues. So that can be another way. I've have dated in the workplace, perhaps maybe not the most sensible decision for most people. If it's the sort of thing that can work out and be long term, it can be amazing. I know a lot of people that have met in work and are now married and have children. If it doesn't work out, yeah, things can sometimes feel a bit awkward, or things can be complicated. So I think that's just common sense there. So are there any kind of customs that are more specific in Poland? So traditionally, I always used to be the guy that would kind of, bring flowers on maybe a first or a second date. And again, you had to be a little bit careful. So for one thing, you don't want to buy yellow flowers. This is something I've read quite a lot online. They're meant to kind of symbolize insincerity or kind of dishonesty or envy, apparently. Also, if you're going to go red, maybe don't do it too soon in a relationship. They're meant to symbolize, something very serious and romantic. And so you might appear too forward. Apparently the best colors to go for are sort of pink or blue. Now, I'm sure people keep telling me there are lots of florists and things about. In my area, I haven't seen too much of that. Typically, I've ended up buying most of my flowers either in some of the local shops if they've had them for sale, or actually at the metro stations. You normally get people sort of selling them there, quite commonly. So that's another option. When you meet people for the first time, what are the greetings like in Poland? So nothing too crazy. You either go for your standard handshake or, a kiss on the cheek kind of thing. Don't try to kiss on the hand. Apparently that's sort of considered old-fashioned. So that's something else to bear in mind. Okay, so another thing that I've noticed, because I've been on a few dates out here, and definitely no two dates have been the same. I can safely say that. You have to consider that, first of all, not everyone in Warsaw is from Poland. So you have Russians, Ukrainians. Other English people, so these are some of the examples of the nationalities I've met. You have a lot of people from, Spain. So, bear that in mind, because of course every, nationality will have slightly different traditions and customs, but I'm going to focus more on Polish today. Another thing which I've noticed is, of course, even if they're from Poland, where in Poland are they from? Typically, a lot of the women I've met are from Warsaw, but just as easily they could be from another region in Poland. They could be from a big city, or they could be from a small village. So you have to think, obviously there'll be different mentalities there, different ways of thinking. You will find that the political beliefs are quite stark. One of the handy things about being from the UK and living here is I can ask about politics without starting a fight. I'm just curious. So I try not to weigh in too much on my opinions. I know in the UK, some of my opinions back in the day maybe caused a few arguments, and it's the same here. You know, if you know if you're like radical right wing and you meet somebody who's like far left, you know you're not going to get on. One thing I would say is politics kind of ties in a bit more with religion here, and this is another factor as well. That you know, is the person you're dating religious or not? And again, in Warsaw, it's a big city, so it could be 50, you know, it could be 50-50 either way. I would say people from like the villages tend to be, you know, more religious. You know, they tend to have a more traditional background, a traditional upbringing than perhaps people in the city. On average, of course, you know, I'm not going to stereotype or generalize, but this is my personal impression. So you have to consider that kind of factor as well. Um, let's see. So yeah, that kind of talks a little bit about the demographic of the girls you'll meet. Um, when it comes to paying, okay, so this can again vary. So I've been on dates where, you know, the girl is offered to kind of go halves. Sometimes they've offered to pay. More often than not, when the bill comes, they kind of go silent, and you're like, okay, well, you step in. Traditionally, like if they offer to pay and you say no, it's fine, you know, I'll cover it, they'll probably offer again. But if you say it a second time, they'll probably accept that. So that's just a kind of a general Polish politeness. Also, I read. I don't know. I have to admit, I went on a date the other day, which, okay, I don't know if this is what killed it, but you know, I've been on a few dates, and then I kind of generally paid for everything, and then this date the girl offered to pay, and it just like threw me, and I was like, oh God. And then I came up with this ridiculous line saying, oh, I'm just more traditional, and you know, rather than admitting that I just wasn't prepared for that. That was a bit embarrassing and made the rest of the date perhaps a little bit awkward. But you know, you're going to make mistakes. This is just a fact of life. Okay, so where might you want to go? So, I mean, in Warsaw, you're spoiled for choice, let's be honest. I mean, if I'm meeting a girl for the first time, I prefer, you know, somewhere neutral, you know, so I would rather go to a bar or a coffee shop. It depends, because not everyone drinks out here. Yes, a lot of people drink, but not everyone does. So again, perhaps something to establish early on. And, you know, depending on what they like to drink, maybe, you know, you want to pick a kind of a classier bar or whatever. On average, most girls I've met here who do drink enjoy beer, you know, so there are lots of lovely craft beer places around. Piff Paff, you know, is a nice one. The one on Nowy Świat is, I like it because for me it's kind of one of the closest places to an old English pub in a way, while still being quite modern, and it's got all the bottle caps on the walls and that kind of thing. So you know, that's a good place to go. You know, you've got plenty of activities as well. You know, you've got quite a few pool places, though it's called billiards here rather than pool. You have got bowling, but I don't know if that's really a good first date kind of place. You know, you've got hula hula, for example, you know, which is, you know, it's a nice enough place to go with friends, but I don't know, maybe kind of lacks the romance that you might be looking for. I mean, me personally, I one of my favorite dates, even though it didn't really go anywhere, one of my favorite dates was, you know, playing billiards. And for me, just like if you can have some kind of interaction, then it brings a bit more life to the date. You have a bit more fun, you can be a bit more playful. But of course, getting to know somebody over a drink is always good as well. Perhaps not in the summer, sorry, in the winter. But during the summer, of course, you know, you've got the parks, and you know, there are some lovely parks here. You know, particularly Rzhenki. You know, I would highly recommend that. It's nice size. You have the peacocks. You know, some nice architecture kind of dotted in there, and it's so open that it's just kind of relaxing. I always like to get out into nature when I can. Oh yeah, another thing to be aware of course, is if things get serious and you know you're going towards that next step, you don't know if the parents will speak English. You know, I've had a mixture. You know, some girls' parents do, some don't. I haven't actually quite got to the meet the parents phase, but again, it's just something to bear in mind. You know, because if you're thinking about, you know, really, you know, being serious with someone, again, it's another reason to work on Polish. And you know, always, you know, show respect to parents, especially out here, because you probably won't go too far if you don't. So yeah, I'm just trying to think. I mean, I would say that, you know, Polish women they're very particular. You know, they will look for signs of weakness. You know, like any, but it always, of course, pays to look after yourself. You know, to be a gentleman. I mean, of course, you know, different girls want different things. Maybe a good idea to try and establish what somebody's looking for at the beginning. You know, I would say listen to what they say very carefully. You know, I've made the mistake of kind of ignoring certain things that have been said, and you know, because I ignore those things, I didn't really kind of pick up on some warning signs about where things were going to go. And you know, learning the hard way about something, it's a great way to, you know, improve for the future, but if you want to do well in the present, then avoid it. Have I had any other kind of disasters? On the whole, most of the dates I've been on have gone well. You know, I haven't really I wouldn't say that I've done anything horrific that I remember. Maybe I have a habit of blacking things out in my mind. One thing you know, is a common compliment that I receive is, you know, people love the accent. You know, so this is something that, you know, Brits will have an advantage here. And, you know, no offense to the Polish guys on here, but a lot of the girls have kind of commented that it's nice to meet someone online who doesn't just, well, talk about sex instantly, pretty much. I think there are a lot of very forward guys on things like Tinder, and the girls, they're just like, you know, it puts them off the whole service, to be honest. But, you know, that was some of my advice about, you know, dating in Poland, or in Warsaw in particular. If you disagree, or if you have any other advice to offer, because, you know, I'm always interested to listen, feel free to comment, and yeah, maybe I'll do an improved video in the future. And if you ever get as far as a Polish wedding, now I'm yet to go to one of these, but they sound crazy. Apparently, you know, the amount of vodka that you will drink at these things is insane. The amount of dancing is crazy, and you know, there'll be so much food you couldn't, you know, dream to finish it. They tend to be very lavish affairs, so I look forward to going to my first one. I hope I survive it. But on the whole, thank you for watching, and yeah, feel free to comment. Please subscribe, and please, if you have any topics that you would like me to talk about, let me know, and I'll be happy to do some research and put a video together and add my own kind of perspective on things. Have a good evening.